Hello everyone, my name is Claudius Kazan. In this video we continue talking about intervals. Last time we talked about primes, seconds, and thirds. Today we continue with fourths and fifths, two perfect intervals. We also continue with Robert Starr's rhythmic training exercises. I will perform the number 14 for you, and the solfege number 8. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Let's talk about fourths first. And if we choose pitch C again, it's a good pitch to start from, and we count up 4, okay, C, D, E, F, that gives us the interval of a fourth, okay? And by the way, that fourth is a perfect fourth. And let's quickly dissect it into seconds and see what's the anatomy of a perfect fourth. Okay, C to D, major, D to E, major, E to F, minor. Okay, so basically if you have a minor second and the other two are majors, it's safe to say that we have a perfect fourth. By the way, the fourth is a perfect interval, meaning that it's a perfect consonant. It wasn't always treated that way. In the Renaissance and early Baroque period, was almost considered a dissonance because it needed some kind of a resolution. But today, it's completely different. Today, we treat it as a perfect consonant, and it's very safe to say that fourths, because they sound very well together, okay, it really sounds like a perfect interval to me, okay? And because of that, we consider it as a perfect consonant. Remember, another perfect consonant that we had was the perfect prime. Okay, because it was the unison. Now we actually have two distinct pitches to talk about, okay, C and F, but they sound so well together, okay, that we call them perfect consonances, okay? And with that in mind, you'll be safe to call them a perfect interval, no matter what everybody says on the internet about the way they treated it back in the Renaissance and the early Baroque period. That's fine. Okay, so once again, two majors and one minor create a perfect fourth, okay? Let's quickly look at another perfect fourth. Let's start from pitch E, E, F, G, A, okay? So we have to go to pitch A in order to have a fourth. And let's dissect that one really quickly. E to F minor, F to G major, G to A major, okay? So we do have our minor one in there and two majors. It's safe to say that we have a perfect fourth between E and A. Great. Let's look at another one starting on pitch F this time, okay? You have to go to B, F, G, A, B, okay? But let's dissect this one and see what it's made out of. F to G major, G to A major, A to B major. Three whole steps in here, or three major seconds, or three tones. Remember, we can call major seconds tones as well, okay? This particular one, okay, it's a little bigger than the perfect. Remember how we called intervals bigger than perfect? We called them augmented, okay? So in this case, from F to B, we have our augmented fourths, okay? Now, augmented fourths are also called tritones. Why? Because they're made out of three tones. Remember the semitones and the tones, okay? And because of this, they call it a tritone, okay? It's a dissonance. It's considered a dissonance, and it sounds like this. Ooh, okay, sounds kind of nice in a way, but it cries out for resolution so much, okay? So the augmented fourth usually resolves, has to resolve. It can't really remain in that state. It really needs to go to, okay, now you can see why this augmented fourth here can also be part of the dominant seventh chord. Aha, okay, so remember this, the augmented fourth, it's considered a dissonance. Okay, why? Because it really needs resolution. It cannot stay in that state in tonal music. Now, well, if you deal with atonal music, and so all the rules are out the window. Okay, but in tonal music, if you have an augmented fourth, you usually expect some kind of a resolution. And the way I resolved it in here is to go from the augmented fourth to a minor 6. The augmented fourth resolves outwards. You know, the upper pitch goes up and the lower pitch goes down. And the smoothest resolution to this would be to the minor 6. We'll talk about 6 and 7ths in my next video, okay? But just for you to know right now that the augmented fourth, it's a hot interval, okay? It cannot remain where it is. It needs to stabilize. It needs to go to an interval that's a lot more stable. And in this case, the minor 6, like I did at the piano, is that stable interval. Great. Okay. Now, like I did with seconds and thirds, I put the C scale here for you guys, okay? These are all the pitches on the natural scale, meaning that you don't have to use sharps and flats to represent. And I created fourths on all of them. C to F, D to G, E to A, F to B, G to C, A to D, and B to E, okay? Just for you guys to see on the C scale that has no sharps and flats, what kind of fourths do we have, okay? The only one that kind of sticks out right now, it's this augmented fourth from F to B, right in the middle of everything, okay? So remember, all fourths are perfect fourths if you build them on the C scale, except the one built on pitch F, okay? F to B, it's that augmented fourth, that tritone. Let's call it a tritone from now on because it's a nice and it's a nice name to it. I like that name, tritone. Okay, 3 tones or 3 whole steps or 3 major seconds if you were to dissect it. Okay, that's great. Let's analyze this particular example right now. Let's get into some kind of analysis now that you know more about fourths. A flat to D flat. Okay, it is a fourth, A, B, C, D, right? It's a fourth. But let's see what kind of a fourth we have in here. Remember, for it to be a perfect fourth, we have to have 2 majors and 1 minor. Let's see if this one meets that criteria. First of all, the way we do it, we remove all the accidentals. We take away the A flat and the D flat, right? And we look at A to D without any accidentals. So A to B, major. B to C, minor. C to D, major. Okay, we have them in this order, major, minor, major, but as long as we have a minor in there, the space between the notes tells us that we have a perfect fourth. So A to D with no accidentals, it's a perfect fourth. Now, we have to put in the accidentals one by one, A flat, D flat, but remember last time I talked to you about a shortcut. If you put the same kind of accidentals on both notes, it's just as if you don't have accidentals at all, okay? Because both your pitches are going to go down by the same amount, but the space does not change, okay? So, A flat to D flat, it's safe to say that it's another perfect fourth. Great, okay? Let's look at this one now. E flat to A, okay? E to A, E, F, G, A, yes, it is a fourth, okay? And if you remember the scale that I had there on the C scale, everything was perfect, okay, except F to B. Now, E to A is not F to B, so therefore E to A, we can safely say, yeah, it's a perfect fourth, but then I have to lower the E, okay? E to A, it's perfect, but if I lower the E, what happens? My interval gets a little bit bigger, right? So right now we're talking about an augmented fourth, that tritone, right? And it sounds like this. Ooh, you know, very much sounds like this. This was original F to B, but now in this case here, sounds very similar. It's the same. Yes, the space is the same. Yeah, pitches are different, of course. Okay, and that cries for resolution too. Remember? Okay, excellent. So another example of a tritone right there. Now, if you want to analyze it, it would be E flat to F. That would give you a tone, or one whole step, or a major second. F to G, another one, and G to A, another one, okay? Or you can think of it this way: E flat to E natural, even though that's not a second, but you know, you can consider it this way. That's one half step, and then E to F, another half step, but put those two together to create a whole tone, okay? E flat to F, therefore, it's a major second. Think of it this way. And then F to G and G to A are the other two. You put them all together, you arrived at 3 tones, or 3 major seconds, okay? Which gives you the tritone, or the augmented fourth. Excellent, good. Let's do another thing now. Let's build a diminished fourth up from pitch G. Okay, let's see. G, A, B, C. So my end pitch there is C. Okay, but I know from that scale that I put earlier there that G to C is a perfect fourth. Okay, it's not F to B. Remember, F to B is the augmented one. G to C is safely perfect. But I have to diminish it. So what do I have to do in order to diminish this? Remember, I can't change the bottom pitch. The bottom pitch was given to you, the G, so that on the bottom has to stay. But I can operate on the C now. Okay, so I have to bring the C down by half a step to make that fourth a little bit smaller, to make it a diminished. So what do? I put a flat on the C. So G to C flat will give me a diminished fourth. Let's see if I arrived at the right resolution. Yes. G to C flat is your diminished fourth. So remember, fourths can be of 3 kinds. They start their life as being perfect intervals, okay? But in this case, I can operate on it, make it, stretch it a little bit to make it into an augmented, or I can also shrink it a little bit to make it into a diminished, okay? So fourths have 3 states: perfect, augmented, or diminished. Okay, great. All right, we talked about spelling enharmonically last time, and I like to do a few exercises with enharmonic spelling. It's good for your brain. So let's try to spell enharmonically G sharp to C. Okay, G sharp to C is a diminished fourth, right? G to C is perfect. But if I raise the bottom a little bit, putting a sharp, I diminish the interval by 1/2 step, and that's my diminished fourth. Let's try to spell that enharmonically. First of all, it's easy for me to spell the G sharp enharmonically. That's an A flat, so let's put the A flat in there immediately. But then I have to respell the C as some kind of a D, right? A, B, C, D. I need some kind of a D to maintain the interval of a fourth, okay? So how do I spell C as some kind of a D, okay? Well, D flat is not enough, but if I put a double flat on the D, that will have the same effect sound-wise as C natural, okay? So the answer here will be A flat to D double flat. Let's see if we arrived at the right combination of notes in here, and that is our diminished fourth. Okay, let's do another thing here. Let's respell enharmonically B to E, okay? But let's do it in 2 ways this time, okay? So one enharmonic spelling is not going to be enough. I'm going to challenge you right now to respell B to E in 2 ways, okay? And let's do it this way. Let's approach it from 2 different directions. Let's approach it first from the top and then from the bottom, okay? So basically, if we have to respell this fourth as some kind of C to F, okay? The original one is B to E, okay? But let's say that we want to respell it as C to F, okay? What do we need to make C to F sound like B and E? You'll say, well, that's pretty easy. If I take F and bring it down by a half step, in other words, put a flat on the F, that sounds like an E, right? because remember, between E and F, we don't have a black key on the piano. So just by bringing the F down by half step, putting a flat, it sounds already like an E. Okay, so F flat. How about the C? I have to make that B sound like a, that C sound like a B, I'm sorry, okay? So basically it's the same thing. If I take C and put a flat on it, automatically bring it down, because there's no black key between B and C on the piano too. So if I bring it down by half step by putting a flat in there, already sounds like a B, all right? So my answer for the first enharmonic spelling would be C flat to F flat. Has the same sound effect on the piano, at least, as B to E. Okay, so that's one answer for my enharmonic spelling. The other one would be a little more extreme. Okay, you'd have to approach everything from the bottom, meaning that you'd have to take pitch A and E. Okay, A and D. I'm sorry, A, B, C, D. That gives you the interval of a fourth. But now I have to make my A's and my D's sound like B and E. Now, how do I do that? Well, I have to bring the A up twice for it to sound like a B, right? By putting a double sharp on the A, now it sounds like a B. And also, I have to put a double sharp on my D, bring it up twice for it to sound like an E, okay? So here's the answer for these two enharmonic spellings, okay, for my perfect fourths. And in your homework, I might ask you to do something like this. This is just to challenge you a little more into this enharmonic spelling. It's very unlikely now, very unlikely that you'll ever see this in actual music notation in a regular piece of music, okay? A double sharp A and a double sharp D together. I mean, it's possible somewhere, but in the regular music, especially you guys as beginners, you probably won't have to. We won't see that anytime soon, okay? But this is good for your challenging, and it's possible theoretically, so why not do it, okay? So this is a very extreme spelling of B and E as a double sharp A and double sharp D, okay? Anyway, excellent. So you guys know a lot about fourths already. Remember a few things. Number one, fourths are perfect fourths. They start their life as being perfect. They are consonant, perfect consonances. They sound good together, okay? They can also be augmented and diminished. So there's three states basically for the fourths: perfect, augmented, and diminished, okay? The perfect fourth anatomy is two majors and a minor. You know, in any kind of combination, doesn't have to be, but as long as you have two major seconds and one minor, you're talking about a perfect fourth, okay? And you can operate on the fourth to stretch it, it becomes augmented, or you shrink it a little bit with accidentals and it becomes diminished, okay? You'll see later on when we talk about resolutions and things like that, where that tritone or the augmented fourth becomes so important, okay? It's not only that it's part of the dominant seventh chord and some other chords in there, and those are the chords that really need resolution, okay? You won't be able to just hold on to that augmented fourth there for too long, okay? Immediately you start to feel, oh yeah, please resolve it for me. It's not nice if it just stays like that, like, you know? So it needs to go out like to there, and now that's a nice conclusion to that stress that you put on the augmented fourth, because it's a dissonance. All right, it needs to be treated as a dissonance and needs to be resolved into a more consonant interval. In this case, I resolved it to the minor six, and that's the smoothest resolution because both notes are going up by half step. The upper note goes up by half step, the lower note goes down by half step. You could resolve it to this, okay? But that's not so smooth because the bottom note would have to go down by a whole step, while the top still goes up by half step. But it's not quite as smooth as a resolution as the one going to the minor six instead of the major six. Anyway, great. let's talk a little bit about fifths now. And since you already have quite a little bit of knowledge of fourths, talking about fifths is very, very easy. Now, one thing to remember about fifths, if you were to remember any of these intervals very well, it would be your seconds, of course, because you can dissect all these other intervals into seconds and see what they're made of. So you have to know about seconds, okay? Thirds, know your thirds very well. Why? Because you create triads out of them and chords and so on. So your thirds have to know. And another interval that I want you to really know very well, it's fifths. The system of scales is built on perfect fifths. So if you know your perfect fifths really well, it's great. You're going to know, it's going to be easier for you to understand the system of scales and how they relate to each other, okay? So let's talk about fifth right now. Fifth, just like fourth, start their life as being perfect intervals. Actually, the fifth were considered perfect consonances even from the very beginning of recorded noted music in the very early Renaissance and the late Middle Ages and so on, okay? So even back then, a perfect fifth was considered a perfect consonance, just like octaves. Perfect octaves, right? Fifth were also... Okay? So they created plain chant and chants like that, and eventually they said, you know what? Instead of singing everything in a unison, why don't we have another voice actually double our plain chant a perfect fifth higher? So that was a nice practice. There was something that was invented, and all of a sudden we have two different voices singing together. Okay, so the perfect fifth, even from the very, very early period of recorded notated music, it was considered a perfect consonance, a perfect interval, and it was treated as such. Very stable, very nice. So perfect fifth. Let's look at a fifth here. Again, I'm starting on page C, on pitch C, I'm sorry. And let's go up a fifth, C, D, E, F, G, okay? Let's look at C. This fifth, by the way, it's a perfect fifth, and let's look at its anatomy here. Again, we dissect it into seconds and we look and see. C to D, major, D to E, major, E to F, minor, F to G, major. Okay, so just like fourth, if you have one minor in there, you have a perfect fifth. But this time you have three majors and one minor. Don't have to worry too much about all the majors, and so just remember, if you have one minor in there, you're talking about a perfect fifth. Okay, so build your fifth in in natural notes without sharps and flats, and if you have one minor in there, it's safe to say you have a perfect fifth. Okay, good. So let's analyze another one. This is on pitch F. So F, G, A, B, C. Okay. F to G, major, G to A, major, A to B, major, B to C, minor. Okay, so I have my minor one. It's safe to say that this is a perfect fifth. Okay, very good. Let's look at this one right now. And I picked this one specifically because it's a little bit different than all the other ones. B to F, B to C, minor, C to D, major, D to E, major, E to F, minor. So one of the majors was replaced by a minor. What did that do to my fifth? If I take a major one and I replace it with a minor, what do? It becomes a little smaller, okay? So this is our diminished fifth. Diminished fifth happened naturally between pitch B and F, okay? And here's the anatomy of it. Major, minor second, major, major, and then another minor. Now, if I combine the two minors, okay, on either side, look at this. If I combine those two minors into one major, that's possible, right? Two minor seconds can combine into a major second. What do I have right now? I have three tones again. Could I call the diminished fifth a tritone because of this? I mean, I'm talking about the space right now, not that you know, has 4 of these intervals in there, but the space is the same as the tritone that comes from fourths, the augmented fourth. So I can safely say that, oh, my diminished fifth, if I combine those 2 minor seconds in there, I can also create a tritone out of this. You can see why the diminished fifth, it's also considered a tritone, okay? Because I can combine those 2 minors in 1 major, and now I end up with 3 major seconds, which we call a tritone, okay? Now, what does that mean? You guys know about enharmonics now. What does that mean? That means that the augmented fourth and the diminished fifth, okay, are enharmonic with each other, okay? Now, if I go to the piano, if I play a perfect fourth, C to F, but then I augmented it, okay? Remember, this is that hot interval that needs to resolve. That's the tritone. So C to F sharp is a tritone. Can I respell this as a diminished fifth? Yes, I can. Instead of spelling it as an F sharp, I can spell it as a G flat, and then I have a diminished fifth. So they are enharmonic with each other. So C to G flat or C to F sharp are enharmonic. Okay? So that's very, very good to know. Also, B to F, for example, because we were talking about B to F as being a diminished fifth. It's a very hot interval, right? And that resolves inwards this time. Okay? So if I spell everything as a diminished fifth, I have to resolve them inwards. And the smoothest resolution for that is if both notes are coming inwards by half a step to a major third. Remember, you know about thirds right now. So the diminished fifth, it's best if it resolves to a major third. Can it resolve to a minor third? Yes, it can. It goes this way. Okay? But then the top note has to go down by a whole step. It's not quite a smooth resolution. But if you're in a minor key, that's what you have to do. Okay? So remember, diminished fifth are also hot intervals, and they need to resolve. But this time, instead of resolving outwards like the augmented fourth, they resolve inwards. Okay? So, great. Diminished fifth resolves to a minor third. Now, let's put the C scale up again. Let's see what you have to remember this time. Let's build fifth on each of these scale degrees, on C, D, E, F, G, and this is what we come up with. Okay? We come up with the fact that only on pitch B to F at the very end, we have that natural occurring diminished fifth. All the other ones are perfect fifth. So you have to remember now B to F, okay, as being a diminished fifth. Now, very careful. When we looked at fourths, we saw that F to B, okay, was the augmented fourth. You can see how they invert into each other also. We talk about interval inversions after we're done talking about all the intervals. Once we're done talking about octaves, we go into inverting intervals. But you can see how F to B and B to F, they kind of invert into each other. You have to remember those pitches, F to B and B to F. F to B, if you go ascendingly, it's the augmented fourth. But then B to F, if you go ascendingly, it's your diminished fifth. Okay? You can look at the keyboard, F, okay? That's my augmented fourth. But now if I invert it, if I take this F and flip it up an octave, I get my diminished fifth. They sound very similar. Okay? Except that this one wants to resolve this way, but this one wants to resolve inwards. Okay? Kind of an interesting phenomenon there. Great. So diminished fifth on B to F, very important to remember. Okay? Great. Let's do some analysis now, okay, of fifth. And I picked pitch G sharp and pitch D. Let's see what kind of a fifth we have between this. Well, It's kind of easy. G to D, you know immediately it's a perfect fifth. So what happens when I put a sharp on the bottom note? My interval shrinks by half a step. So I'm talking about a diminished fifth this time, and that's correct. Okay, let's analyze another one. B to F sharp. Well, if you remember carefully, B to F was our diminished fifth, right? So what happens if I raise the top a little bit? From diminished, it becomes what? It becomes perfect again. So very important for the system of scales. I'm going to prep you a little bit now. In order to go up a perfect fifth from pitch B, you can't use F. F, it's your diminished fifth, so you have to go from B to F sharp. Okay, so this particular interval here, B to F sharp, is a perfect fifth. Great. Let's build some intervals now. Let's build an augmented fifth down from pitch E flat, for example. Okay, so let's do it in our heads right now before I put the resolution on the tablet. Okay, I need a fifth down from E, so let's go E, D, C, B, A. Notice I'm going backwards now through the alphabet and through the notes on the staff, okay? E, D, C, B, A. So it's safe to say that I have to have some kind of an A in there. I also know that E to A, if I remove the accidental, is a perfect fifth. What happens when I put my accidental back, which on the note that you can't change? My fifth becomes what? A diminished fifth. All right, but I have to make it augmented. So I have to operate on the bottom one, which I can change. Okay, twice I have to bring it down once to make it perfect, then another once to make it augmented. So on that A, I'm going to have a double flat. Okay, let's see if that's correct. There you go. E flat to A double flat is our augmented fifth. Okay, going down. Okay, let's do some enharmonic spelling. I like this enharmonic spelling games in here. How do I spell enharmonically E flat to B? Okay, well, first of all, it's easy to spell the E flat as a D sharp, okay? But then I need some kind of A. So how do I spell B as some kind of A, okay? Well, I need two sharps in there on the A to make it sound like a B, okay? So let's see if D sharp to A double sharp is my answer. And there you go. My augmented fifth, okay, is D sharp to A double sharp. And the effect is the same as if I played E flat and B, okay? Okay, let's talk a little bit about respelling enharmonically pitches B to F. But I want you guys to do it this time in two ways, okay? So one kind of respelling enharmonically is not going to be enough. We're going to have to do it in two ways right now. This is just to exercise your brain to think a little bit outside the box and a little more exercises with enharmonics this time. So pitches B to F, okay? That's your diminished fifth. Remember, a naturally occurring diminished fifth on the C scale, okay? But let's first approach it from the top, okay? Let's approach it from the top. In other words, we have to have some kind of a C to G, okay? So how do we spell B to F as some kind of C to G? Remember, C to G is another fifth, C, D, E, F, G. So we're good there, okay? All right, let's take pitch B. How do we spell B as some kind of a C? Well, it's very easy. If I go to C and I put a flat on a C, that sounds like a B, right? Remember, there's no black key between B and C on the piano. So if I put a flat on the C, automatically brings it down a half step. That sounds like a B. So my first note there, if I approach everything from the top, is going to be C flat, okay? Now, how do I spell an F as some kind of G, okay? So if I take G and I have to make it sound like F, I have to put two flats on the G in order to make it sound like F. So my other note is going to be G double flat. So two flats on top on the G to make it sound like F. Now, so my first enharmonic spelling, it's going to be C flat to G double flat, okay, as a diminished fifth. Okay, now the other one is going to be approaching it from the bottom. So I'm going to have some kind of an A to some kind of an E, okay? So A to E is another fifth, A, B, C, D, E. That's good. Now, remember, I have A and I have to spell it to sound like some kind of a B. Well, that's pretty easy. If I put two sharps on the A, okay, then it's going to sound like a B. So my lowest note is going to be A double sharp. Now, how do I make an E sound like an F? Remember, my top note is E. Now I have to make it sound like F. No big deal. If I put a sharp on the E, automatically sounds like an F because there's no black key on the piano, so E sharp sounds like an F. So my second enharmonic spelling is going to be an A double sharp to E sharp. And let's see if that's exactly what I have here. There we go. Okay? So original B to F diminished fifth. My first enharmonic was C flat to G double flat. Okay? Kind of extreme, but it's still possible. And but I think the other one's even more extreme. The A double sharp to E sharp. Okay? And remember, these are just theoretical. We're not doing anything musically oriented right now. You won't find these necessarily in a piece of music. Okay? If composers want to write double flats and double sharps, they probably respell them for you automatically, just to make it easy for you. Okay? Now, theoretically, they may not make sense all the time, but composers are more concerned with the practicality of things rather than the pure theoretical stuff. Here, we do only theoretic stuff. Everything is theoretic, and we can't respell anything if it doesn't make sense. But a composer will definitely spell something for you like an F instead of a G double sharp, you know? Or it will put a B in there instead of an A double sharp, okay? So really, this is all theoretical right now. Okay, great. This comes to an end right now. We talked about fourth and fifth today. We saw that fourth and fifth start their life as being perfect intervals, and I played a few of them for you at the piano. Okay, and they can also be augmented and diminished. Okay, we also underlined the fact that the augmented fourth and the diminished fifth sound alike. They are enharmonic with each other, okay? And I want you guys to remember very carefully. Remember that scale, the C scale, and how you build fourths and fifths on the C scale. And pay very much attention to what happens between F and B and F, okay? F to B is your augmented fourth, and B to F is your diminished fifth. Okay? All the other ones are perfect, and you don't have to worry too much about it. Okay? If you want to dissect them, remember that you have to have one minor second in there, and if you have one minor second and all the other ones are major, you're talking about the perfect intervals. Okay? And it applies to fourths as well as fifths. All right? But if you have three tones or three major seconds in there, you're talking about a tritone. Okay? And the tritones were augmented fourth and diminished fifth. And those are those intervals that you'll have to take very much care of later on when we start doing four-part writing and so on. Those are going to be your hot intervals that need to resolve. Augmented fourth resolve outward, okay? And the diminished fifth resolve inward, okay? If you keep that in mind, you're going to be okay. All right, in your homework, you're going to have plenty of opportunity to work with enharmonics, okay, respelling things, not in just one way, but I want to challenge you to spell things in two different ways, okay? And do that first, if you will, in your mind. It's easy to do it on paper. You know what double flats and double sharps do right now. But do it first in your mind. See if you can do it in your mind. If you get stuck or you start forgetting things, then yes, put it down on a piece of paper. Okay? But eventually I want you guys to be so good with this that you can do it in your mind and you don't have to write anything down and just theoretically do it, you know, without the help of the visuals. Okay, great. All right, next let's go to the Starrer book, and I promised you that I was gonna perform for you the number 14. I assigned to you number 13 and 14 last time. Okay, and 13 and 14 were in 7/4, the complex meter 7/4. Okay, and you notice that in number 14, what Mr. Starrer does here, he switches conducting for you based on the configuration of each bar. Some of them are 4 and 3, some of them are 3 and 4, and some of them are 2, 3, and 2. Okay, so remember, you can conduct 7/4 in 3 different ways. You can conduct it based on the 3/4 formula, meaning 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. You can conducting on the 4/3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. Or you can do it on that 2, 3, and 2 formula, which is kind of weird. It goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Basically 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, and then another 2. Okay, they all add up to 7. So in this number 14 in here, he's switching between these 3 different kind of conducting. Now, it's not easy to do it, but you have to look ahead, and you have to know you're conducting very well. Okay, so you almost do it as visually. You can see, okay, in the second bar of the first line, you can see he goes 1, 2, and then 1, 2, 3, and then 1, 2. But in the first bar, you can eye it and you can see, oh, that's my 4, 3. The first one is 4, the other one is 3. Okay, how about the first measure on the second line? That's based on the 3 and 4. How about the second measure on the second line? That's your 2, 3, and 2 again. Okay, so you have to look at it this way and anticipate, you know, look ahead, anticipate your conducting, and do this. All right, now I'm going to take my metronome, because I like this metronome, at 90, and let's see if I can do a good job doing this at 90. Again, this is number 14. 1, 2, 3, let's go. Ta, 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 ta. All right. I hesitated a little bit in a couple places. You probably saw me doing this, but I made up for it really quickly. So if you guys can do that and you're not caught making a mistake, like, oh, I got completely stopped in there and I have to restart it, that's pretty good. All right, let me try it one more time this time, and let's see if I can anticipate a little bit better what's going on. So one more time, number 14. Maybe I can do better this time. 1, 2, 3, let's go. Ta, 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 ta. Up, see, one more time. So ta, 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 ta. I felt so much better about this last one, okay? So, again, if it takes me a couple tries to go through this perfectly, and if it takes you 3, 4, 5, 10 times, it's perfectly okay, all right? Just remember, you have to read ahead. This is important in sight reading. If you guys are instrumentalists or vocalists, it doesn't matter. You're always faced with new music. So what you have to do is look ahead. Let your brain process what it had seen already, but you always look ahead. It's a process, but believe me, it's possible to do it. If you always look ahead, you know, and let your brain take care of performing what you've already seen, okay? That's great. Now, for next time, I want you guys to go to number 15. Number 15 is one of those that combines many different meters. Mixed meters, what we call them. You can see he switches from 2/4 to 3/4, back to 2/4, 4/4, you know, some complex meter in there, 7/4 again. So it's a whole bunch of stuff in there. So you have to constantly switch your conducting. Only one this time, the number 15. So make sure that number 15 is good before we go on to chapter 2 finally. And we get to sing some eighth notes this time. We're going to divide the beat into 2 equal parts this time, okay? So up to this point, you had only half notes and quarter notes and ties and things like that, but no eighth notes. Now, starting with chapter 2, you'll be singing eighth notes as well. Very good, great. One more thing that we have to do today is to look at solfege number 8. And solfege number 8 is a little challenging again, some chromatic stuff in here, but this is great for you guys, okay? Those of you who asked me for homework and the solfege now have an opportunity to see how solfege number 8 sounds. Now let's quickly look over it and see if we have anything that we have to pay specific attention to. Okay, you will notice immediately that it's written in 3/4. So all the other solfeges up to this point were in 4/4. This one, for the first time, I believe, it's in 3/4. So we have to conduct in 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Also, you'll notice that it starts with an incomplete measure. What do we call that? If you remember from prior videos, we call that the Anacrusis, or the pickup bar. Okay. We talked about that when we talked about music notation. Okay. So we start with an upbeat and we go on. All right. So first of all, you have to sound your pitches. You know, pitches in here are more difficult than the rhythm. You can see how the rhythm repeats. You have this pattern of half note, quarter note, or 3/4 notes, and occasionally you have the dotted quarter, eighth, and so on. But nothing other than that. But your pitches are not that easy to master. So first of all, you go to mi, mi. Remember, this is solfege, so you have to know your solfege names. Mi, do, re, si, la, fa, sol, do, do, re, mi, fa, sol, and so on. Okay? So sound your pitches first. Make sure you know those very well. Try to do it without the rhythm first. Okay, and then try to do it without the help of the piano. The piano is great, but then can you sound those pitches in order without having to go to the piano for help? Okay, that's a little more difficult, and that's where you need to sound a lot. Go back to the piano, do it without the piano. Go back to the piano, do it without the piano. Okay, until you are good, and then work 1 or 2 lines at a time, and then put it together into one performance. Okay, I'm going to put my metronome back at 90 right now, and let's see if I can do this well. Okay, this is my beginning pitch. Okay, now notice that I don't start with the same pitch that I end. Okay, but I'm going to sound the pitch on the piano that I end with, okay, which is going to be my la. Okay, so if I arrived at the la nicely with the piano, then I did a good job. Okay, so here we go. 3/4, starting with a pickup bar, performing solfege exercise number 8. 1, 2, 3. Mi, do, re, si, la, fa, sol, do. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, si, do, re, mi, fa, mi, do, re, si, la, sol, mi, fa, sol, do, si, la, sol, la. Perfect. All right, you can see how this one was not very easy, okay? For me, it's not easy because it has a wider range. It has a couple of octave leaps, one in the 4th line, right in the beginning, from mi to mi, and the other one on the last line from do to do. My range is not too great. Again, I'm not a singer. I should practice singing. I can probably improve my singing a little bit. But since I'm not practicing singing, I have to switch registers. I went from regular singing to falsetto, and then I had to go back. That's why it sounded a little weird, okay? That's fine. You know, going into falsetto is very good for men if, you know, range is too high for you to sing in regular head voice. But anyway, so that was exercise number 8. Please ask for the homework for next week's lesson at the classical music theory guy at gmail.com, and I will provide you the PDFs necessary for the homework, meaning the 2 homeworks for the 4th and 5th, and also the solfege number 9 and 10 this time. I always give you 2. You know, the first one's a little easier, but the second one's a little more difficult. That's why I usually perform it for you guys. So this is it. This concludes our lesson today. In my next video, we're going to continue with 6 and 7s. And let's see, maybe we can fit the octave as well, because I want to be done with the intervals so we can study interval inversions. Okay, we're going to take all these intervals and we see how they invert, okay, from one to the other. And then at some point we're going to talk about compound intervals, intervals that are larger than an octave. And we only go up to 2 octaves. We don't go beyond that because it's redundant afterwards. But you have to know your 9th, your 10th, your 11th, 12th, and so up to the perfect 15th. Remember the perfect 15th, the double octave. Okay, so we'll talk about that in future videos as well before we start talking about the system of scale. I'm dying to start talking about the system of scales. But remember, we had to study intervals before we study the system of scales, especially the 5th, the perfect 5th. So since those were in today's lesson, I want you guys to pay very much attention to perfect 5th. Be able to construct 5th up from any pitches. Pitches with accidentals too, okay? And pay attention to the 5th that starts on F. I'm sorry, the one that starts on B, okay? Or C as in solfege. B to F is not a perfect 5th, okay? So you'll have to bump that F up by 1 sharp in order to create that, that perfect 5th. That's going to be very important for the system of scales, okay? So B to F sharp is a perfect 5th. B to F is a diminished 5th. Okay, pay attention to that. So, until next time, you guys, I want you to stay healthy and safe. And I'll see you in my next video when we start talking about 6 and 7s and possibly octaves. Be good.